Welcome to our next video on the integumentary system. In the last video we looked at the dermis. The dermis has two parts. We have the palpary dermis up here, and then we have the reticular dermis down below. The palpary dermis has these Meissner corpuscles that detect a light touch, and they're found in these dermal papilla. So that would be the dermal papilla. The reticular dermis is made up of dense irregular connective tissue, and it has these lamellated corpuscles. And I probably should not draw pink or yellow on yellow. So it has these lamellated corpuscles on them. And these detect a crude touch. Now there's structures we haven't talked about. Hair and skin glands. So that's what we're talking about in this. So hair and skin glands and fingernails are called appendages of the skin. We're going to look at the three types of skin glands. And we care about their secretions, where they're located, and where the ducts exit. So those are the three things I will ask on the test. You'll be able to identify the parts of a hair and contrast hair textures. So, why do you have oily skin? It lubricates, or does it? Why do you put moisturizer on your skin? Do you know what your moisturizer is? It says sebum on it, probably. Do you clean that oil off with expensive pads? Yes, I'm opposed to the beauty industry. What's the purpose of sweat? Any ideas? Cool. Yes. What are the parts of the hair under the skin? Apparently, some people pluck eyebrows. I would never do something like that. It sounds very painful. So you're pulling out the root, maybe? Why do we have goosebumps? Why do we have hair even? I mean, it's not keeping us warm. So, we're going to look at skin derivatives. They are divided into glands, hair, and nails. The glands are then subdivided into sebaceous glands, sudoriferous glands, and mammary glands. So, sebaceous glands. Sebaceous glands produce sebum. And this is lubrication for the skin, and it kills bacteria. And they're found associated with hair follicles. They're on the hair follicles, and the ducts empty into the hair follicles. So, if I were to take my skin picture, I'm going to draw a hair. This is the bulb. Now, on it, about right here, we're going to have a sebaceous gland. So this is a sebaceous gland right here. So the sebaceous gland is actually found on the hair follicle, and the duct empties into the hair follicle. Now, in reality, you have the hair follicle, the epidermis is invaginating down. So even though the sebaceous gland is right here, it's emptying right there. So here are a couple of sebaceous glands. This right here is the hair follicle. And we could see you actually have part of the epidermis surrounding it. That's the sheath around it. So the sebaceous gland is sitting on top of the hair sheath. And its secretions are going onto the hair, and then they slowly leak out. Now, acne has been blamed on the sebaceous glands. What happens is you have a little bacteria. That little bacteria falls in there and dies. And it forms something called a whitehead. That is covering it. And it forms an annoying, embarrassing zit. Now, when that breaks open and oxygen gets in, it becomes a blackhead. So, did that gross you out? So there's two types of sweat glands. Sweat glands are called sudoriferous glands. And I'm going to call them eccrine and apocrine. One of the textbooks we use, I forget which one, mistakenly calls this one a merocrine gland. And it is actually a merocrine gland, and so is this one. So you can't really call either of them merocrines because they're both technically merocrine glands. So this is an eccrine gland, and then the other one is an apocrine gland. How do they differ? Well, let's see. Ducts of eccrine gland goes to pores on the skin. So here's an eccrine gland, and its pore goes all the way up to the skin. Here's another Oops, that's not an eccrine gland, that's an apocrine gland. How dare they make an apocrine gland look like an eccrine gland? So the apocrine gland, which should be further down, its duct goes to the hair follicle. That is one major difference, is where the duct is going. Now the apocrine glands are found in the groin region and the axillary region. So, isn't that the sweat that stinks? So let's learn about the sweat. Here's our skin again. And eccrine glands are found everywhere. So I use a thin skin, and they're these tightly coiled tubes. And they're very tight, so I don't see, much space around them. And then their duct goes directly to the surface. So the eccrine glands, tightly coiled tubes, duct goes to the surface, and the sweat is 99% water. Why does sweat taste salty? Well, it has ions in it, and the water evaporates. That's what it's supposed to do, leaving the ions behind. And these are all over. So, on the test, I'm going to ask you, what is the sweat made up of for eccrine glands? It is 99% water. It is to cool you. That are found all over. And what sucks is, by missing our face-to-face lab, we're not going to be able to map our sweat glands. When we do, we find out we have a ton on our palms and our foreheads, and not very many like on the back of the arm compared to those two places. So, the eccrine sweat glands are tightly coiled tubes. They release their secretions directly to the surface, so the pore is on the surface. They're most numerous in the palms, soles, so thick skin, and the forehead. The secretion is 99% water, and it's made up of cuboidal epithelium. And this is the only gland not associated with hair. So here we have our tightly coiled tube, and we have the duct going directly to the skin. So again, tightly coiled tube. Yes, purple on a purple histology slide works perfectly, I know. So tightly coiled tube. Our other sweat gland is the apocrine. Now remember I did emphasize tightly coiled tubes? Well, the apocrine gland is not tightly coiled tubes. It is larger tubes, and they release their secretion onto the hair follicle in the axillary, armpit, and pubic regions. So let's draw a hair follicle first. There's the bulb, there's the root, and there's the shaft. So we're going to have the apocrine gland being a larger tube. So they have larger lumen on them, where the eccrine would be more like this little tiny lumen. Now the apocrine, its duct, is going to go on to the hair follicle. They think the hair actually helps disperse what is in the sweat. So what is in the sweat? Well, the secretions of these glands are mostly proteins and lipids. One of those lipids is estrogen. Why would it make estrogen? Well, women, when they ovulate, make a lot of estrogen, and they think this estrogen actually acts as a pheromone and helps women sync up their menstrual cycles. Now, other proteins are supposedly to signal availability or not availability. It's thought some of it might help a newborn smell their mother. That might just also be body odor, by the way. So, now why does this sweat stink? Well, bacteria love proteins and lipids. It looks at you as a big, giant protein-lipid factory. Now, that supports it. Now, in your armpit, it doesn't breathe that much. Not enough oxygen. The bacteria dies. So dead bacteria causes odor. So, apocrine sweat, it is rich in proteins and lipids. It is found only in the axillary and pubic regions, and it's associated with hair follicles. So again, you need to know, is it associated with the hair follicle, what's in the secretion, and where it exits. So functions. Apocrine sweat, rich in proteins and lipids. Thoughts as pheromones. Mate attractions, sync up menstrual cycles. Eccrine sweat is mostly water. It cools the skin by evaporation. So our last skin gland is a mammary gland. And both men and women have them. And they're very reduced, though. They don't have very many unless the woman is breastfeeding. Now, lots of estrogen is going to cause the development of the mammillary glands, and they're going to form these lobules. Now, they are very large lumens, and in these lumens you could actually see stratified cuboidal epithelium. Did I mention sometimes in the apocrine glands you sometimes see that too? Now, the fun thing about their ducts is the ducts have stratified columnar epithelium, so they actually do exist. So, large lumens, both sexes have them, activated by estrogen during pregnancy to multiply. Which of the glands does this look the most like, though? Does it look like an eccrine gland, an apocrine gland, or a sebaceous gland? And the answer is apocrine. And what do mammillary glands make? Milk. So, in closing, mammillary glands make milk, modified apocrine glands, large lumens, humongous ducts, and we'll talk more about them when we get to the reproductive system. So hair. Hair is produced by a bulb. So it has a large bulb, and then it has a root. The root is what is underneath the skin, and then what erupts above the skin would be the shaft. So people who pluck eyebrows and pluck hair, they're pulling the shaft out and it's breaking the root somewhere, leaving the bulb just to make more hair. It consists of keratinized epithelial cells, and it has melanocytes that are making color in its cortex and some of it in its medulla. Now, so here's the bulb. Here's the bulb down here. Now we have the shaft. We have the root right here, and then the shaft is above. So the hair follicle is enclosed in this protective sheath right here. And that protective sheath is actually an invagination of the epidermis. And again, we have the bulb right there. We have the root. We have the shaft sticking out. Now there's this smooth muscle. Remember, you have all four tissues in the skin. This is called an erector pili muscle. It's a smooth muscle. It causes goosebumps. In all other mammals, when they get scared or cold, the erector pili causes the hair follicle to become erect. It helps trap air in there to stay warm, or it makes it look bigger. Our cats do not like each other. When Grumpy Cat comes out, it puffs up when it sees the other two cats, trying to make itself look bigger. The fact that it's a 30-pound cat helps make it look bigger also. So, hair follicles have three parts. You have an outer cuticle right here, and that's the toughest part. Now, all hair is going to have a cortex right here, and there's an inner medulla. Now, the medulla is absent in the hair on arms and legs in children and in women. In men, they have this medulla. So, there's melanin in the hair. So the melanin gives hair its color. So why is there so many different hair colors? Well, hair color is because of melanocyte production. This person, we're going to say, does not bleach her hair, but instead she does not make very much melanin. This person makes a lot. So the more melanin, the darker. So far, so good. What about her head? And she doesn't look like she has white hair. There's actually two melanins. There is true melanin called eumelanin. That is a brownish pigment, or black. And then you have pheomelanin. This has sulfur-containing amino acids, and it actually traps some iron, so it is red in color. So this young lady makes a lot of pheomelanin. This lady right here, she could make a combination of both true melanin and pheomelanin, or she could just not make very much melanin. So light blonde can be a mixture of both true and fake melanin, or pheomelanin. I shouldn't call it fake. My mom had red hair. Or you just don't make very much melanin. So somebody